Infosys, which reported its second quarter earnings for FY19, and the company's revenues beat street estimates, but margins missed expectations, falling below 24%. Now, even as the company secured large deals worth over $2 billion. To discuss the company's performance, Kritika Saxena is standing by with a special guest at the Infosys headquarters in Bengaluru. Kritika, over to you.
Well, I have with me Ranga. It's his final interview as the CFO of Infosys. Ranga, it's, as you said, in your words, a blockbuster quarter. But just to play devil's advocate, the street was expecting you to cross that 24% mark this time around. But did you take a conscious call this time to reinvest whatever benefits you made? And where was the pressure coming in from in terms of even expenses in some areas having increased?
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. It was always a great pleasure interacting with you over the last several years. Well, coming back, this particular quarter's performance, if you look at multiple dimensions, not just revenue growth, top client growth, the deal wins, the operating cash flow for the first half of the year, EPS growth year on year, and even the operational efficiency, which I'm very proud of taking laser sharp focus over the last 3 years, have been really multi-year high. And it has been very, very satisfying for me as I step down, this robust financial performance in the last quarter. Coming back to your point, yes, rupee benefited us by about 80 basis points, and we also had a good pricing as well as another 70 basis points came to us. But that entire 150, we invested about 100 basis points for new additional compensation and also to address certain pockets of attrition that we had. And that we invested 100. And as we had announced in the beginning of the year for the US localization model, as well as for the highest subcontractor expenses that we had to incur to address the talent supply chain. These are the two principal factors. So 100 towards comp, 50 towards subcon, as well as the on-site US talent. So that took away the entire 150. But we are and also in the second half of the year, our trajectory of investment is going to be sharper than the first half. That's the second reason. So
the strategy of reinvesting benefits back into the business, does that continue, Ranga? And in that case, if it's going to be sharper now, is it a given then that you're very close to crossing the 24% mark?
Well, I don't want to guess for the margin, but what we can say is that, the currency movement is also another factor. How is it going to play out? It has been extremely volatile if you look at the last 1 week at least. So at this point in time, we are comfortable with the guidance. And we are pretty much, if you look at the first half of the year, pretty much at the top end of the guidance. And we had specific investment plans which outlined. In fact, in the beginning of the year, we have brought down our margin guidance by 1%, if you recollect. And that was primarily towards addressing these investments. We are in the trajectory of making those investments.
Ranga, are you confident then that in the next 2 quarters, Q3, Q4, despite the seasonality, Infosys will remain at the higher end of the margin guidance? Because that is something that you had alluded to last quarter.
I think, what I will talk about is the first half, which is 23.7. And the reason we have kept 22 to 24 is that we have certain investments to make in the second half, which we had outlined in the beginning of the quarter. And the pace of those investments will be there in the second half.
Okay, let's talk about the capital allocation strategy. You have devised a very specific capital allocation. $400 million is already done. $1.6 billion, is that going to be completed in the next 2 quarters, Ranga? And of course, you're not as a part of the company, but what will the strategy be to give back those returns to investors?
Clearly, on the capital allocation strategy, when we announced, last year we returned $2 billion by way of buyback. We clearly said that up to $2 billion will be returned for fiscal 19, of which 400 is already given by way of special dividend. Balance 1.6, board clearly said we will distribute in a method that will be announced and at the appropriate time. And I'm confident that the board will evaluate it at the appropriate time and make it happen.
But that 12 month is coming to a close, so is Jan going to be the period when the buyback will be announced?
Well, I think there are, I don't want to kind of, comment on, guess on the buyback, etc. But at least there is a commitment to return up to $1.6 billion back to the shareholders. That was announced in April.
Last question before we let you go, Ranga. How do you see, as you step down now, as you move on from Infosys, what do you make of the macro environment? How well positioned is Infosys to be able to handle the changing macro headwinds? And it's across across the board, be it Brexit, be it trade wars. Do you believe that Infosys has weathered the storm, is confident that they will be able to handle even attrition that may increase on a quarter-on-quarter basis with you gone, and where are you headed?
Well, I think the last question, I think, is a loaded question. Let me address the first part of the macro. Well, I think if you look at the broader demand environment, as we said, in the US has been positive for us, and the growth in the financial services momentum has been there. And our exposure to China is very minimal, and also to the Southeast Asia is very minimal. So we do not really, at this juncture, do not see much of trade-related pieces affecting at least our sector at this point in time. In the US, for some of the other changes that happened in the visa, we addressed proactively through the localization and things like that. So, and the attrition, it's a demand environment related. I'm sure with the measures that we took this quarter, I'm sure that is one of the focus areas. We'll continue to watch very closely. It's still 19.9% on a standalone basis. Coming to your question, look, one of the things last 18 years in nearly 2 decades, I've worked with each one of the founders, each one of the CEOs of the company, especially as CFO in the last 3 years. I worked with 3 CEOs. And the key thing is I've been an integral part of this growth journey. When I joined, the company was less than 200 million in revenue. Integral part, of course, the entire management team and thousands of Infosians have worked towards it. And the scaling is one clear expertise. Second part is really, as a CFO, the transition management, and put a very resolute focus on financial outcomes for a large balance sheet management, capital allocation, APA with US. These are all some of the skill sets I want to put to use in a way in certain places. So especially the experience of managing a large listed global corporation is something which I'm sure that coupled with my CFO expertise, I want to put. I'll be the first person to tell you when I make that announcement.
I'll join the dots then. Thank you so much, Ranga. It's been a pleasure to talk to you.
Right, that was the CFO of Infosys on the company's second quarter earnings. On that